jail. Joining me now to discuss this is the leader of the Social Democratic Party. That's William Clouston. Good afternoon to you, William.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'd like to get your thoughts on the green investment plan, actually, of Labour's in just a couple of moments. But in terms of this plan, the idea is that, you can protest in England and Wales. It's absolutely fine. But police are going to be given powers to arrest protesters who cover their face in a bid to avoid prosecution. We often see a lot of people who would never cover their faces in normal daily life wearing a mask when they're up to no good. People who scale national monuments could face a 3-month prison sentence and a £1,000 fine. These are measures to be added to the criminal justice bill currently being considered by Parliament. They'll also make it illegal to carry flares and other pyrotechnics during demonstrations. And the Home Office said that the right to protest is no longer an excuse for certain public order offences when it announced the plans. Do you agree with the government, or is this yet another attack on our freedom to protest?
I think there's nothing wrong with the proposals per se. I think anyone that scales, there's no excuse whatsoever to scale a war memorial. Either you know it's a war memorial and you're deliberately defiling it, or you're ignorant, and in which case you're an ignoramus and you should know. I'm a little bit sceptical about the proposals. Why? Because they're new powers, and what's the point of having new powers if we won't use the old powers we've got? So if you've been paying attention, I know you have, over the last few years, you've had lots of incidents which breach this type of thing, and the consequences of doing so have not been very significant. You remember the fellow Astrophal Sang who tried to burn a British flag on the Senate. The consequence of that was a fine and a discharge. So, in fact, the powers existed to lock
but there's no deterrent. But again, we've seen people graffitiing. I mean, police standing there while people are spraying graffiti over these war memorials. I mean, this is desecration, effectively. I mean, certainly, some of these, they are about the dead. This is like going into a graveyard and desecrating a gravestone. And I think the anger has been that the police stand by, and we're told it's because they don't want to inflame things. But well, maybe they should inflame things sometimes to say, no, grab them down, arrest them the moment they come down, and fling them in the cells. Because that has got nothing to do with your right to protest on the streets against a government policy, something you want to happen or you don't want to happen. You've got the right to do that, but only because of the people who died, who are marked in those memorials.
Precisely. And you've got to end this two-tier policing, which is very, very demoralising for the public. We've seen a lot of that. Black Lives Matter protesters were allowed to assemble, more than 6 people assembling in the summer of 2020. Nothing was done about it. Yep. Extinction Rebellion regularly blocked the roads, which is an offence. The police stand watching them. So that's got to end. I'm very sceptical about it. I think most of these problems, Julia, are actually cultural, because we're governed by people that have no real intention of setting the cultural tone here. They let these things happen, and then they think, oh, well, we'll use some more powers. So there's nothing wrong with the powers, Julia. I noticed the leader of the Green Party cropped up and said this was the road to authoritarianism. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Most of the public want the public protected, and they want the public realm protected.
Yeah, and they want peaceful protests, and they support that. Look, I feel very strongly that I'm concerned about, those new laws involving a protest causing a nuisance. Unfortunately, democracy is quite messy, and it is a nuisance, but we're not seeing a nuisance on London streets and other city streets in recent months since the Hamas attack on October the 7th, with particularly these pro-Palestinian marches. We're seeing intimidation, we're seeing blatantly criminal acts, chants, placards and the like, and criminal acts of graffiti and vandalism and desecration of our war memorials. And as you say, the laws are already there. And this is the thing. This government just brings in, if in doubt, bring in a new law, when we very rarely enforce any of the laws we already have, and certainly don't do visibly enough, because there is this fear of upsetting certain groups of people. They seem to be perfectly happy to upset other groups of people, but some groups seem to get a free pass. And even if they are arrested later, and then, as you say, get a small fine or discharge, that doesn't have the same impact as the police showing that they will not put up with it on the day. And that's a clear message that needs to go out about the police having control of our streets and not the mob.
Exactly, yes, and the policing should be free. You know, it should be fair to all, and people would see it's not. I mean, you make a broader point there about certain categories of crime effectively becoming legal. Certain categories of crime in the big cities are legal. If you get your bicycle stolen, it will not be dealt with. The chances of you ever seeing your bike again are practically zero. So, you know, will this? The big question we should be asking ourselves is: will these new proposals, are they sufficient to deter? I don't think they will be, for exactly the reason I said before. I think we've got a lot of legislation, but we've got a lack of leadership and courage, actually, to put it bluntly, among the people that lead London and lead the police and our country.
And a load of political correctness where people don't upset people. Again, my thing is, if we're in a situation where you're fearful of upsetting people on a march or doing anything by enforcing the law, that march probably shouldn't be going ahead if that's a level of intimidation. And if the police are intimidated by people on a march, that's also quite a statement. And particularly, and we've just been showing some footage there for those who are watching on the telly box rather than listening, of people with their masks on. I see this all the time. I see it in gangs of yowls, as my father would call them, walking down the street, who you know perfectly well have no remote concern about COVID or catching the latest winter bug going around, but they're wearing masks. And we see it on protests again and again. You know, when I went to the Show of Solidarity march for Jewish people in this country to speak out about anti-Semitism, I didn't see anyone in a mask. People seemed perfectly happy to show their faces. And yet so many people on these marches, you know, are wrapped up in scarves, covering their faces, you know, young, healthy people. And you just think, I wonder why you're covering your face. I always thought when they brought in mask mandates and the like and just made them normalise this, we have created a problem for ourselves where you normalise people being able to cover their faces. Why do they want to cover their faces? We know why.
Well, precisely, it's because largely a lot of these people are committing offences in terms of the things they're saying and the placards they're holding. But actually, again, on a broader point, Julia, you need to defend the right to protest. That's a key embedded right we have. But you don't have a right to protest and block London up every single Saturday, in my opinion. You just don't.
There's a balance to be had, isn't there? Before I let you go, can I ask you about the expected announcement today from Keir Starmer that he's going to ditch Labour's £28 billion green investment pledge today? Now, there's been a lot of flip-flopping on this and shilly-shallying around. And is it 28 billion or does it exist or not? Apparently it's going to be dropped. Do you think that's a good thing that he's going to drop it or not?
It was a fairly vague pledge anyway, Julia. It wasn't very substantial. They were talking about new British energy and putting £3 billion into it. That's tokenism. There's nothing serious there. I've been following Keir Starmer for about 5 or 6 years in detail, and I haven't been able to find any idea what his opinions are on economics or trade or any of this. The only thing I've ever found he really cared about was dishonouring the British people's vote in 2016. That he cared about. So I don't know. But on the broader point, we do have a major problem importing too much energy. So domestic energy resilience is a key matter. And if he's serious about that, I'd welcome it. But the trouble is, I don't think he is.
No, there's nothing, it's certainly their pledge by 2030 to have all electricity production in the UK completely clean and renewable. We ain't got the nuclear capacity, we ain't got the wind capacity, the solar capacity. It's a non-starter. And he might... No, this is my worry. Does he know that and he's lying to us, or does he not know that? How worrying is that? But there we are. Really good to talk to you. William Clouston, of course, leader of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you for joining us. Still with me in the studio.